First of all, I want to introduce Mr. Rahul Gandhi, and I want to thank you because I know that you came to Medellin and you decided to have a meeting with people, students from a university. So for us, it's an honor to receive you in this university. Mr. Rahul Gandhi, he's the leader of the opposition, and he has been member of the parliament since 2004. In 2007, he was named General Secretary of the Indian National Congress. Then in 2013, he assumed as Vice President of the Indian National Congress. And then he served as President of the Congress from December 2017 until 2019. He attended Stephens College at Delhi, Harvard College, and Rollins College in Florida. And then he did a MPhil on Development Studies from Trinity College at Cambridge University in the United Kingdom. He has been recognized for a person who actually envisioned an idea of India in the world, and also for his thoughts about health as a right and a basis of equality. He has also do some speeches about Fourth Industrial Revolution, education connected to the future, entrepreneurship and business, and innovation with humanity. So thank you very much, Rahul, for being here. So the word is yours. So thank you very much and welcome.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure and an honor for me to come here. So are we doing simultaneous translation or I just go? I just go. So I believe most of you here are engineering students. Is that correct? Is that fair? Yeah? So I'll start with a mix of geopolitics and engineering, because that's what is going on today. If you look at big empires, and you look at the British Empire, you look at the American Empire, and any other empire, what you find is that they arise in energy transitions. So when you have a transition in energy, the way we move, the power that controls that transition tends to become a superpower. The British controlled steam, the steam engine and coal, they became a superpower. They had the British Navy, and we in India fought that empire, eventually got our freedom in 1947. After the British, the Americans came. Then the Americans managed the transition from coal and steam to petrol and the internal combustion engine. And now we are facing a new transition. We are facing a transition from the internal combustion engine to the electric motor, and from the fuel tank to the battery. And the real fight between the United States, which has a maritime vision of the world, and China, which has a terrestrial vision of the world, is about who is going to manage this energy transition. Who's going to control battery technology? Who's going to control the electric motor? Who's going to control the optics that will allow you to move? And if you look, people say, okay, we're moving into a phase of electric cars. But if you step back slightly, what you find is that a drone, an electric car, a high-speed train, they all have the same basic architecture. It's an electric motor with batteries, and then some way of communicating with the world. Optics, and then you can add software and AI to that architecture. And so the entire battle that is taking place, the geopolitical battle, is about who's going to manage this transition from the internal combustion engine to the electric motor. And so far, the Chinese are winning that battle. They're winning the battle because they control battery technology, they control the electric motor, they control optics. And they control it because they are the biggest manufacturer, the biggest producer on the planet. Right? The United States used to be the biggest producer. Some of the older people here will remember a time when Cadillac was big, Ford was big. And now, instead of Cadillac, you have BYD. You have DJI. So the Chinese control of production is what has created massive political issues, and it's also given them a base to make this transition. So that would be a broad theme that I would put to you for discussion. We, of course, are China's neighbor, and we are a close partner of the United States. So we are sitting right in the middle, right in the middle of where the forces are colliding. And they're colliding everywhere. If you look at Ukraine, what's interesting about Ukraine is the electric motor is destroying the internal combustion engine. The drone is destroying armor, is destroying tanks, is destroying artillery pieces that are powered by the internal combustion engine. So what the drone allows you to do and what the electric motor allows you to do is move in ways that an internal combustion engine just cannot do. And another way to think about it is an electric motor allows you to decentralize power. So it allows you to take power in a car and put it into 5 or 6 or 7 different places. It allows you to take power in a drone and decentralize it, maybe put four motors on either corner and make a quadcopter. So that to me is the technological battle that is taking place. On top of all this, you can overlay AI. So from production and from consumption comes data. The Chinese control production data. They're the only ones who know, who produce the data when things are produced. When this TV screen was produced, the Chinese have the data on how it was done. When the speaker was produced, the Chinese have the data on how it was done. The Americans don't. So the Chinese dominate production data, and the Americans in the Western world and in India, they dominate consumption data. So Uber is consumption data. Google is consumption data, right? So that's the data on which AI is going to work. And a lot of people say, well, AI is going to revolutionize things. Absolutely, it's going to revolutionize things. But the person who's going to have power in that revolution is the person who controls the data. And for example, in our part of the world, most of our data is controlled by the United States, by companies like Google, by companies like Uber, by companies like WhatsApp. So the Americans have a distinct advantage when it comes to communication, when it comes to consumption data. And that broadly is the fight that is taking place. Now, any questions you might have, I'd gladly answer. Thank you.
Yeah. No, tranquilo. Ya fue, it was already translated. Bueno, muy bien. Para poder establecer entonces esta conversación, yo invitaría a que pudieran hacer preguntas. What I'm saying is that they can ask some questions, so in that way, Mr. Gandhi can answer them. So maybe at the beginning of this, I wanted to know more about the future of education. The future of education. And how technology is transforming, the whole education system What's your view about that topic, and how do us as universities have to change inside, and what the kind of things that we have to do in the future?
I mean, I think earlier there was a view that you could actually give information to students at scale through computers, through the internet. But I get the sense that even though that is valuable and very powerful, you still need a human connection. You still need a teacher who actually communicates and puts that information together. So I think information technology helps you get information to the student, but I think you do need a human connection to turn that information into useful knowledge.
Moving to another topic, I mean, I have seen that you have done an extraordinary leadership in India. And I just want to know, what's your view about India? India is going to be a quite relevant country in the world in the next future. I mean, if you see the numbers of growth in India, if you compare that to China, I mean, you see that India has a lot of future. I mean, is becoming quite relevant in the world. So what's your view about India, and what are the kind of things that you are saying in India in order to have that leadership in the world?
I think, of course, India has tremendous potential. It's 1.4 billion people, the size, I mean, bigger than China now in terms of population. But India is a completely different system than China. So whereas China is very centralized, uniform, India is decentralized and has multiple languages, multiple cultures, multiple traditions, multiple religions. So India is a much more complex system, and India's strengths, which exist, are not necessarily China's strengths. They're different. So they're big systems, but they're different and they operate differently. India also has a very old tradition, spiritual tradition, and a thought system. Very profound and old ideas that are very useful in today's world. The idea of non-violent political action comes from deep within Indian tradition. Mahatma Gandhi was a modern exponent of that. So there's a lot that India can offer to the world in terms of our tradition, our way of thinking, information technology, our engineering capability, our healthcare system. So I'm very optimistic about India. But at the same time, there are also fault lines within the Indian structure. There are risks that India has to overcome.
Which are those risks that you see?
The single biggest risk is the attack on democracy that is taking place in India. Because India has multiple religions, multiple traditions, multiple languages, and India actually is a conversation between all its people. And different traditions, different religions, different ideas require space. And that the best method for creating that space is the democratic system. And currently there is a wholesale attack on the democratic system in India. So that's a risk. This other big risk is risk between different conceptions, different parts of the country, right? Some 16, 17 different languages, different religions. So allowing these different traditions to thrive, giving them space to express themselves is very important for a country like India. We can't do what China does, which is suppress people and run an authoritarian system. Our design just will not accept that.
Now move to another idea. I mean, from India, what's your view about a country like Colombia? I mean, you came here, there must be some reason for that, but what's the kind of view that you have from India to a country like Colombia in South America?
I mean, I've been here 2 days. It's quite fascinating. There's obviously a very dynamic political contest taking place, and the country seems to be quite polarized between different political ideas. I quite like what I see as the spirit of the Colombian people, which is quite resilient and relaxed. They're not, at least they don't seem aggressive, you know. It seems, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems that they tend to deal with problems and take life as it comes. And that's quite a good way of thinking about it. I like the diversity here. I've never seen so many new fruits as I saw over the last 2 days, so yeah.
Talking about one of the things that you have said about how do you see humanity and politics in the world, there is a concern about polarization in the world. How do you see that? How to deal with polarization? How leaders as you can introduce a new view in the world in which polarization maybe is not the right way?
I mean, from our perspective, I can only talk about what we are seeing in India. Large country like India is struggling, even though we have good economic growth, we are struggling to create jobs for our people. And the reason we are struggling to create jobs for our people is because we are not actually producing, we are not manufacturing. We are a service-based economy, and large countries require a manufacturing base, require the act of production to employ its people. So for us, having a world where China produces everything means that we struggle to employ our people. So for us, fundamentally important thing is to start production and start to compete with China on producing material goods. That is central. A country like India simply cannot manage if it doesn't do that. Most of the people, for example, who are creating the polarization in the United States with Mr. Trump are people who have lost their manufacturing jobs, right? It's the collapse of US manufacturing that has left a huge number of people in the United States and in India and in Europe without jobs. And that's a volatile cocktail, right? So I think what's really important is China has demonstrated to the world how you do production in a non-democratic environment. We cannot do that. We are a democratic environment. We have to have a democratic structure. So for us, what's interesting is, can we develop a model of production, a model of manufacturing that is competitive with China, but in a democratic environment? And that's where a lot of the conversation between countries like the United States and India, Western Europe, is heading.
Once I was in the World Economic Forum with Ricardo Hausmann. He's professor from University of Harvard. And he told me, and he said, Colombia is more India, less China.
Yeah.
Saying that Colombia is more human talent, and that we have to develop the human talent services, for example, software production and so on, rather than industry. Would you agree on that with Ricardo Hausmann?
No, because, look, there is a place for services. But in a country like India, high-tech software services is at best 1%, 2%, 3% of the population. Right? It's a very small number of people who are actually employed in the software industry in India compared to the massive size of our country. India simply cannot succeed economically only on services. We're very good at services, and it's a very important part of the future. It's a very important part of the economy. But you cannot do, a large country cannot do only services. Country like Singapore maybe can do it, you know. But large country like India can't do it. And by the way, I mean, he's a professor in Harvard. He's finding out that America can't do it, right? Because the levels of polarization that America is facing are not sustainable. And the entire political conversation in America, what Mr. Trump is proposing is a return to manufacturing, which I don't believe is possible for them, right? But that's what Mr. Trump is proposing. And pretty much any country now will tell you, big country will tell you that, look, having a world where China is the only producer is seriously problematic for us. Right?
There was an article this week in The Economist which says that the one who is winning this war on tariffs is actually China, not the United States. So that China is taking more advantage of the war on tariffs that is happening now in the world.
I mean, I wouldn't classify it as a war. I'd classify it more as a competition. But look, if you are the globe's biggest producer, right? If you are sending products to the rest of the world, you will be in a very strong position by default. I mean, when the United States was the biggest producer in the world, they had a very strong position, right? So having this network of production, because in the 21st century, it's not just factories, right? Factories were silos, concrete silos. This is a completely different concept. This is a connected production network. And it's not just in China. It extends out of China. The core is in China, but it's in Vietnam, it's in Malaysia, it's in Thailand, it's in Bangladesh. So it's a completely different production system than anything that has been seen before. And it's very powerful.
I was looking at some of your remarks. This one was on Telegraph India, talking about health. And it's important because here we have engineers, but also we have doctors, future doctors. So you said health care and education can be left to the private sector. The government will have to spend money on this to provide access to low-cost health care and education. So what's your view about health, especially in a country like India, which is quite a big country, which has to do a lot of things in terms of health?
I think health and education are places where AI is going to play a very powerful role. But I also feel that in a country like India, simply privatizing healthcare and education doesn't work. We've tried it, and it doesn't work. Because you cannot give healthcare and education service to the poorest part of your population if your system is fully privatized, right? So, at least myself and our party believe in solid government support for education and healthcare. By the way, what's not known is that India's top performing education universities are all public sector, they're all government. So the famous IITs, these are government universities, right? IIM, IIT, they're all government. So Indian public education, Indian public higher education has been a big success. India hasn't done so well. Well, a lot of states in India haven't done so well in the primary education sector. Some states have done very well. But a large number of our successes in education are government.
And talking about the doctors, I was reading Bill Gates said that in 20 years with artificial intelligence, you will not have doctors because, I mean, all the diagnosis could be better done by using artificial intelligence. What's your view about artificial intelligence and medicine?
I think a lot of the thinkers in the West have this, everything or nothing idea, right? That doctors will disappear if AI comes, right? This is sort of, and it's common. I remember when computers were coming, it'll destroy jobs. So there is this tendency in the West to see, in black and white. I don't think that's how it works. Computers took away jobs, and then they created a whole new set of jobs. In the same way, I think AI will take away some jobs, it'll create a whole new set of jobs. And the country or the people who are positioned well will benefit. So I think in terms of the impact of AI, I'm glad the West says that it's going to remove all the jobs. I'm looking forward to getting most of those jobs to India. So there is a tendency there in the West. Whenever a new technology comes out, to see it as completely disruptive, right? AI is going to destroy civilization. The computer is going, internet is going to remove all jobs. I don't subscribe to that. I think there are pros and cons of every technology.
And that comes with your idea of an innovation and humanity. I was looking at some of your views in NDTV about innovation and humanity. How innovation should improve people's lives? What are the kind of things that humanity or humanities or humanism is becoming quite relevant in this next future? In which ways?
Look, at the end, whatever technology is there, it's going to be used by a human being, right? There's going to be a human being who's going to use it, be influenced by it, be affected by it. So I think good principle is humility and compassion. That when you're thinking about technology, you are thinking with humility, and then you're also thinking about what the effects of this technology are going to be on other people, right? So I think those are two very powerful values, and they're enshrined in the Indian political ethos. Our entire freedom struggle was, in fact, the only freedom struggle where these two principles were central. The British could kill our freedom fighters, but our freedom fighters would not act violently against them. And so this is a very, very powerful and deep value.
You know that in the world, there is a trend, at least in Latin America, there is a trend here in Colombia too, on demographic numbers, which means that the natality numbers are reducing. And also there is another trend about mental health issues. Those are issues related to the future of our cities and our countries. How do you see that in India? Is that happening also in India? Is different? And how to deal with that?
I mean, look, in India, we've got a huge population. And our view is that if the population is productive, effective, then it's fine, right? But if you have a huge population and it's non-productive, and you're not able to give jobs to people, then it's problematic, right? If you look at the population growth rates in India, they're stabilizing. So the parts of India that are doing well, progressing, the population there is slowly stabilizing. I mean, we don't subscribe to sort of radical measures like the Chinese do on population at all. One-child family and stuff like that. So we feel that big population can be an advantage as long as you're doing enough to make it so. What was your second question? You asked something else.
Oh, mental health.
Yeah, mental health, yes. There is an issue because the competitive pressures are very, very high in India, especially among the younger generation. Limited opportunities, massive numbers of people, very difficult exams, difficult schools. So there are mental health issues across the board. There is a traditional system in India of managing some of those issues that is quite effective. I mean, it has its role and it's quite powerful, but it is an issue.
Let's move to another topic, which is entrepreneurship. 35% of this university, of our alumni in this university are actually entrepreneurs. Most of them digital entrepreneurs. And you said something in Indian Express, something about entrepreneurship in India. You said that businesses have been decimated and India is unable to generate jobs for youth. So what's the kind of ideas that we can implement, that you are going to implement in India in order to do that?
So that is a specific point I made because of two policies that the government came out with. One was the demonetization of our currency, and the other, which essentially destroyed our small and medium businesses and allowed very large monopolists to control big sections of our economy. And the second is a goods and services tax, which was again designed to harm small and medium businesses. So we believe that infusing technology into agriculture, into small and medium businesses, and supporting small and medium businesses is the way forward for entrepreneurship. And that's a big difference between us and the current government. The current government believes that having one or two big monopolists is the solution. We don't agree with that.
That's quite relevant for this country, because in this country, more than, I would say that 70% of businesses are informal, non-formal.
Exactly.
And small enterprises, the majority of them are small enterprises. And also we have another problem, which is informality in the way that we use a lot of cash for all the transactions in the economy. More than 70% of the transactions are in cash. So we have actually said, and we have discussed in this country, that we have to do something about that to solve the informality in terms of small enterprises, but also to reduce the cash and do more electronic transactions. In India, you try to do something to, extract cash.
So they demonetized the currency with the idea that they'd get rid of cash. It doesn't work. I mean, they demonetized it and cash is right back, you know. So as a policy, it was a failure. You're right. There is big informal economy in India and in Colombia. But I think the forcible conversion of that informal economy into a formal economy is problematic. Whereas the gradual conversion of that informal economy into the formal economy is the way to go. You know, I don't think there's a reason that informal economy exists. And if you use hard tools to destroy it, you hurt people. I mean, there is, of course, there's a corruption element to that economy, but there's also a non-corruption element to that economy. There's a transaction cost element to that economy.
Now that you talk about corruption, in Colombia, we have there a huge problem. 6% of our GDP, people say, or some people say, is related to corruption. How to deal with corruption? Technology? Use of blockchain in...
I think, at least in our experience, decentralization of power is an effective tool. In India, we have huge amounts of corruption now at a very, very centralized level. So, you know, 3 or 4 businesses basically taking over the whole economy, having a direct relationship with the Prime Minister. So it's rampant in India. But I feel that decentralizing power, making things more transparent, bringing people into conversations, bringing people into processes is the best way forward. But corruption does exist, and it's a difficult thing to get rid of.
Would you recommend a decentralized model for a country like Colombia? You said in India it's decentralized.
I'm nobody to recommend anything to Colombia. I don't know Colombia. I don't understand it very well. But I can tell you what works for us. It's for you to decide what works for you.
But would you say that decentralization has been good for India?
In certain spaces, yes. I mean, it's again not a magic wand. There are certain spaces where decentralization has worked very effectively. So for example, one of our most productive, effective states politically is Kerala, where we have an extremely decentralized political system. And they have very good healthcare, they have a very good education system that has been built over the last 40, 50 years.
Before taking questions from the audience, I was saying that you are a member of currently you are a member of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Defense, which means that you're working on security. Now we're dealing with some issues on security in Colombia, especially security related to drug dealing, drug trafficking, and the whole business on drugs. Which are the main concerns in the world nowadays about security and how to deal with them?
in India, our security is geopolitical, right? The work that we do in our committee is nation state level, right? It's Pakistan, it's China. That's the crux of the defense committee work. Then, of course, we have internal security as a paradigm. So yeah, that's the broad thing. We also have drug problem in a number of states, not as acute as yours, but we do have crime issues, drug issues. Different states in India do differently. Some states are much better at dealing with them. Some states are not so good. You have to visualize India as 30 big states, 29 big states, right? Our biggest state is more than 200 million people, right? So our biggest state, I think, is the sixth biggest country or seventh biggest country in the world.
Let's have some questions from the audience. Con libertad para preguntar en español. Él tiene un sistema de traducción en español. I have one question from the General Manager of the Central Bank in Medellín, Carlos. ¿En español?
Bueno,
sí.
Bueno, Mr. Gandhi, muchas gracias por estar aquí. Excelente presentación. Yo quisiera pues hacerle una pregunta y poner sobre la mesa una perspectiva un poquito más optimista sobre Occidente. Hay tres cosas de Occidente que creo que son superiores a lo que puede prometer economías como la china, la rusa, la norcoreana, la iraní. Una, las ideas, estamos hablando de democracias, allá estamos hablando de dictaduras. Otra, la innovación, todavía sigue siendo Estados Unidos y varios países de Europa en conjunto mucho más innovadores que lo que son estas otras economías dictatoriales. Y otra es el poder militar. Todavía sigue Estados Unidos siendo un gran poder militar. De hecho, Europa tiene tantas ojivas nucleares como Rusia. Ellos lo que les ha faltado es, yo creo, resolve, decisión. Pero en el tema de las ideas es el más importante. Las ideas. Is it working? Okay, I can try in English. Right. So in ideas don't always go the same way as interests do. So you said in your country you're glad you have democracy to deal with the differences, para pues, lidiar con las diferencias entre los grupos religiosos, étnicos. La democracia es clave en la India, usted dijo. Estos países no tienen democracias, tienen dictaduras. Para los que no sepan lo que quiere decir eso, los invito a oír el podcast de Prince para saber qué es lo que es el régimen de Xi Jinping, y Next Year in Moscow para saber lo que es el régimen de Rusia. Xi Jinping, cualquiera que no esté de acuerdo con él, va a terminar, si es un empresario quebrado, y probablemente... So anyone who goes against Xi Jinping in any way, ideological way, would end up either broken, if it is a firm, or in jail, if it is a political opponent. Similarly in Russia. In Next Year in Moscow, there is a girl saying, I want to be brilliant, and the mom saying, no, you should not. You should be brilliant as a mouse, big as a mouse. Don't aspire to be notable because you become a target of Putin. So several countries currently, and the Western countries are posing sanctions to Russia because the way he is, because of the Ukrainian war. And several countries have used to punish firms who deal with firms which go against their very principles, like, for example, exploiting labor and so on. So you said there are two dimensions to approach India and Russia. One is the ideas, the other is interest. You said you want to get closer economically to, India should go closer to China. But how about ideas? How do you expect to deal with it? Mostly because India, I guess, is a pivotal country currently. If India will actually really get close to these economies, the world will change a lot.
No, I'm not of the view that India should necessarily get closer to China. I don't think that. But look, from from our perspective, each country has their way of doing things, right? We don't like to opine on how they should run their system. I don't think it's my place to come to Colombia and start advising you on how I think you should run your system. I can have a view on our system, on our way of doing things, but the Indian idea is not to go to places, not to go to Russia and say, listen, you guys now, we don't like how you're running your country, or to go to America and say, sorry, you're not treating people nicely. We don't like doing that. We understand that each culture has a perspective. People have different ways of doing things, and people should decide how they do things, right? So we don't like interfering in the internal perspectives and ideologies of different countries. We have a set of values which we generally believe in. We do not like the idea of aggression. We do not like the idea of violence. But we also understand that there are times when violence happens and aggression happens, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is, as far as Russia is concerned, we have a very long-standing relationship with them. We have a relationship with them in the military sphere, and we've got a deep, long-standing relationship with them. So for us, Russia is also a valuable partner, right? And we feel that we can manage the United States and Russia and other people and manage our relationships with them. We don't like the fact that a war is taking place in Ukraine. We don't like it for the fact that thousands and thousands of people are dying in Ukraine, and we do hope that that war ends soon. But we are not in the habit of going and telling people how they should run their country.
Una pregunta. Házmela en español para
No, I can do it in English as well.
In English.
Not a problem. First of all, thanks to University for the invitation, and welcome to Medellin and Colombia as well. My name is Sergio Escobar. I'm the executive director.
If he does it in Spanish and then the lady just translates it in English.
Sí, que la puedes hacer en español y la traductora la traduce, sin problema.
On the mic.
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay.
It cuts
Bienvenido a
off. Yeah,
Medellin.
what I mean is that if she can do it on the mic, after he speaks on the mic itself.
The problem is that she is over there. Yeah.
That's fine. Let me try again.
English, Spanish?
Spanish.
Okay.
Do it in English.
English.
Let's keep it safe.
All right.
But by the way, I understand Spanish, but I'm not 100% certain. So
That's important that you understand Spanish, because it's that question. The United States is becoming year by year so weak just on political and economical matters, not military. But are India and China ready to take that leadership for the world in the next 50 years?
look, I don't know about China, but I don't think India sees itself as taking leadership in the world. I don't think that's not our model, right? We are a large country, and we believe in having a partnership. And we are not arrogant enough to believe that we should lead the world, right? Every country has its own perspective, every region has its own perspective, and I think there is a lot of scope for working together and a lot of scope for partnership. But the idea that India is going to lead the world, I don't think that is how India views itself. Maybe the Chinese think differently on this. But India, I don't think, has an intention to one day lead the world. We understand that we are a big country, a large country, and we have a weight. We understand that we have a responsibility. We understand that we should behave in a particular way. And of course, we want prosperity for our people. We want our people to succeed. We want our people to work. But I don't think we see ourselves as leading the world.
There is another question over there. Here,
Yes.
and then there, and then over there.
Okay, you explained very clearly how the empires are created during transitions, energy transitions, and explained very well about steam, coal, and oil and combustion engines, and now electricity. However, if you check the statistics, you see that China is importing year after year more coal, and now is the first coal consumer in the world, actually accounts for half of the consumption of coal in the world. Whereas Western and European countries are reducing coal consumption. So I can see clearly how China is going to he's taking advantage of this change because he's not changing the way he produces electricity. He's changing the way the electricity is consumed. So reducing oil consumption it's not reducing actually, because electricity must be provided some way, and China is producing electricity from coal more than any other country in the world. So half of the consumption, if you add the consumption of coal in the world, just add to the consumption of China coal. So maybe that's an advantage for a short time. But after a while, when more countries develop on photovoltaic, wind, hydropower, and nuclear power, China will be behind in a short time. What do you think about that?
Currently, if you look at wind and photovoltaic, it's all Chinese technology. Pretty much all solar panels are made in China. Pretty much all the motors that go into wind turbines are made in China, right? That's the first point. But see, it is correct that China is using a lot of coal. It is also correct that China is using a huge amount of energy for production, right? America is using a lot of energy for consumption, but America is not producing this speaker, this. And all this requires energy. And a lot of the energy that China is using right now is coal. China also has huge plans in the hydroelectric space, has huge plans in the solar space, wind space, and decentralized pebble reactors, right? So they are making that transition. The point I was making about the electric motor is that it is a completely different way to move, right? So for example, interesting question. Why does a motorcycle weigh 100 kilos and a car weigh 3,000? To carry one passenger, you need 3,000 kilos of metal in a car, if one passenger is driving a car. And a motorcycle has 100 kilos, carries two passengers. So why is a motorcycle able to carry two passengers with 150 kilos of metal, and a car needs 3,000? This question is at the center of the transition to electric. So what do you think the answer is? Engineering students. Yeah. But why does the car need the structure?
Las preguntas con el micrófono para que todos en el auditorio podamos escuchar. En un momento te la llevamos.
May I answer your question?
Yeah.
Because if you account for the weight of a battery car is much more than a petrol car.
No, my question is, what is it about the car that requires 3,000 kilos of metal? And the answer is, it's the engine. Because it's the engine that kills you on impact, right? And the motorcycle is light because the engine disappears from you when you have an accident, right?
Every time the engines in motorcycles are heavier and heavier. If you see, the power in motorcycles nowadays are becoming heavier, are higher than older motorcycles.
But in a motorcycle, when you have an impact, the engine is separated from you. So the engine doesn't hurt you. Whereas in a car, when you have an impact, the engine comes into the car. So the entire car is designed to stop the engine from killing you. The electric motor breaks that centralized energy system. The electric motor allows you to put a motor there, put a motor there, put a motor there, put a motor there. So the electric motor is a decentralization of power. And that's really its effectiveness, right? You can simply not get a drone to fly. You know those quadcopters? You simply cannot get a drone to fly with 4 engines. It'll just tear itself to pieces, right? So circular motion is a completely different way of moving. It's a much more effective, much more powerful way of moving. And circular motion is now there in robots, because robots are all electric motors. It is there in drones, and it is there in cars, right? So what I'm talking about is a revolution in mobility. Sorry?
The battery's weight is higher than the engine's weight.
Yeah, absolutely. But the battery does not, the battery does not kill the passenger, because the battery is under the passenger. The engine is right in front of the passenger. So the structure of the car, electric car, and the structure of the internal combustion car are completely different. But the main point I'm making is that we are moving now from the world of the internal combustion engine to the world of the motor. We're moving from the world of, we are moving to the world of the drone, which is an even more effective demonstrator of circular motion. And then further effective, more effective is the robot. A robot is essentially hundreds of motors put together. And that's the space where China is ahead of us. Now, how they are powering that is problematic today. But they are going to try and change the way they power that in the future, right? But once you have the architecture of mobility, then you've sealed the game. So once the United States has the architecture of mobility in the internal combustion engine, and once it has the resources and controls the petrol economy, the game is over. And that's really the fight that is taking place. China is locking up the game for circular motion. And they've locked it up in motors already. They've locked it up in batteries. They're locking it up in optics. And they're also locking the entire value chain of the battery. And that for us is problematic.
I'm taking 2 more questions and no more because I have to close. I am doing the bad cop here. So here's one question, and the other question is over there, the guy with the pink shirt, close to Felipe.
Thank you. Thank you, Rahul, for the wonderful speech. I have a question. It's more on geopolitics. We understand the future is today with the technologies, whatever is happening, it's good. But like looking at the geopolitics of the world, slowly right wing is taking control of the world, I would see. Like Europe, there are like a lot of protest against the immigration. In US, it is happening. Australia as well is joining the party. So given that, like, I would like to understand, haven't we learned our history well? My understanding is like, we are like slowly going towards the era of a Second World War or the First World War. And my understanding is like, right wings are more dominating than left wings. Even with all due respect, even in India, that's what is happening. So it's like polarizing people, showing a common enemy that like he is your common enemy. He is taking away all the things from you. So how to reverse this, or like how to make it better for the future?
We are in a transition. We're in a transition from one energy system to another. We're in a transition where a superpower is being challenged. We're in a transition where the financial system of that superpower is being challenged, where the military system of that superpower is being challenged. So it is going to be a turbulent time. There is going to be, unfortunately, there is going to be violence. Now, the question is, can we reduce it? how to reduce it, and in these transitions, where are the opportunities, right? How can countries position themselves to take advantage of a revolution in circular motion? How can a country position itself to take advantage of robotics, et cetera, et cetera? But I do feel that we are entering an unstable time, right? And of course, I don't necessarily think that right-wing parties are here to come to stay. I think this is also transitional. You'll have changes from right-wing to left-wing, and we can see that. I think here you have a left of center party, if I'm not mistaken. So it's different countries, different sort of political formations. But the central thing where I would agree with you is that we are entering an unpleasant time, you know. And so if you're prepared for that unpleasant time, if you're prepared for the disruptions that are coming, you are likely to find opportunities. The other thing that I would say is that, and this I've seen in my politics also, that what used to work 10 years ago does not work anymore, right? Even in politics, the way we used to connect to people does not work. You have to connect to people completely differently. For nation states, you have to imagine completely differently. You have to imagine a new future. You have to think of changes in a completely different way. So for young people, it's a very exciting time. And I think countries like Colombia have certain advantages, you know, where they can maneuver in these spaces. Thank you.
Having one student question and the other one from the pink shirt.
Okay. First of all, this electric transition has been taking part for quite a while, actually. It started with small vehicles, then motorcycles, then microcars, then cars, then trucks, then trains. Now, the next step would be, I guess, boats, then planes, and later probably even things to take us to outer space, maybe, or something. And the other is, besides the countries already mentioned, what countries do you think that have the potential to become regional or even global powers in the next coming decades, Mr. Gandhi?
Countries that understand their regional balance well, and countries that connect regionally well and become useful nodes in the region will do well, right? So for that, you have to have an understanding of what is around you. You have to have a flexible perspective. There are countries that you can already see they are beginning to transform themselves. I mean, it's visible, right? Certain small countries might do well as well, right? Singapore is a very flexible country. It manages quite well. You can see that, for example, of course, India has a huge opportunity in its region. China will do well. Country like Turkey, you can see is expanding its power. So there are certainly countries. Brazil is another example that is doing well. South Africa is doing well. So there are these countries that understand how to connect globally and regionally. And I think that's powerful. And on the electric front, of course, it's true that circular motion, electric motion has been going on for a long time. But it's now reaching a critical level, critical mass. And I can't really predict how it will go, but certainly it seems that it's going to be a big part of the future geopolitics. I mean, we're already seeing it in our legislation. We're seeing it in the legislation of many countries, that these technologies need to be sort of controlled and taken care of.
Last but not least question.
Okay, thank you. So, more than a question, I would say that if maybe you can give us a final message, and taking notes, you set a parallel between the production, whether it's AI or electric engines, and also the consumption. And as you said, for example, in this part of the world, very influenced by the USA, we are very good at the consumption, whether it's the social network or the electric vehicles. And here in Antioquia, especially in Medellin, we are being recognized for being an industrial territory. And the youth, some part of the youth, I will not say that most of the youth, are very good at the consumption, especially in the digital world. So there is a trend that maybe you can get rich in 2 or 3 years by being influencer or being the digital lord. And during your conference, you are saying how the manufacturing and how to create jobs, it's important. So it's not a question, but maybe a final message for us and for the youth to show us how important also is to create jobs, whether it's not very disruptive or innovative, but I think that we are very focused on the consumption, but we need to change our chip and see how can we start producing.
You know, somebody yesterday asked me, why have you come to Colombia? It's very important in the 21st century to understand and observe different cultures, because you never know how you can connect or how and where you'll connect with somebody until you actually go there. Because for me to say, well, sitting in India, that this is how I'll connect with Colombia, or this is how I'll, this is the type of relationship I'll have with Colombia, doesn't work. So being open to other cultures, regardless of how big or small they are, is very important. Because you never know where value lies. For the people who are doing the influencer bit, I mean, my personal view is enjoy yourselves, but please do not rely on that, because that stuff is going to disappear, right? This is temporary. This is a temporary phenomena. Make sure that you have some resilient skill that you can depend on, that is useful. And the more specialized, the more unique your capability is, I think the easier it is going to be for you. So if you're a doctor, make sure that you have some specialization that nobody else has, because you're probably the first generation that can sell that skill anywhere on the planet. You don't have to sell it just in Colombia, you can sell it anywhere you want. So you have the tools for massive marketing, massive projection, but you do need that 1 or 2 or 3 skills that make you unique. I have a big social media presence. I would not rely on that thing. That thing is a lot of fluff. Be careful. So that's how I would say. If you're doing manufacturing here in Medellin, that's excellent, and I wish you all the best. I hope you're successful. And come and see what we are doing in India, and maybe we can work together on it.
Muchas gracias, Mr. Gandhi. Muchas gracias por su presencia. Thank you very much for being here. As I said before, it was an honor to have you. I think that you gave us a lot of extraordinary insights and